Welcome once again to our YouTube video series on employment law. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And on this particular video, we're going to be focusing on those large multinational, international corporations that undertake corporate-wide downsizing and layoffs, and what that means to yourself as one of those individuals who has been laid off by one of these large international corporations who just, because of the economics of the situation, has to undertake a global corporate-wide layoff process. Now, what tends to happen is that these large multinational companies have grown so vast and so diverse, and they've centralized so much of their operations that they in fact oftentimes make major mistakes with respect to how they undertake their processes. Because what they look to do is they focus their operations on centralized systems in the interest of achieving financial efficiencies. And in many respects, it does enable them to achieve financial efficiencies until the time comes when they have to terminate individuals. And they terminate these individuals in many different countries and in many different provinces and states. And what this does is creates a complex scenario where they subject themselves to the unfortunate system that they have created of a centralized, uniform system that is not really designed to deal with the potential that they have done stuff that is inaccurate, inappropriate, and potentially in transgressions of the local laws. And this means local employment laws, such that where you have employees who have been long serving, and they might have started off with a different company and be brought into this new international company and this new centralized system over the course of 10 or even 20, 30 years, they now find themselves being let go from this particular company. And they're offered a package, and they're even given the opportunity to have the package reviewed by a lawyer. Now, what tends to happen is that package is reviewed in the context of every other corporate dismissal. And that means lawyers all too often make the mistake of reviewing it as if it were simply a run-of-the-mill termination layoff as to any other company. And what we're talking about as any other company, we're talking about local companies. We're talking about companies that are focused on a particular province and exclusively within that province. Or maybe they operate in a few provinces, but they are international in scope. And their operations are not centralized and focused, and potentially, even though they have local operations, large parts of their operations from accounting, payroll, legal, are all undertaken in a foreign jurisdiction. So what exactly does this mean? Well, what it means in my professional perspective is that you have major vulnerabilities on the side of these large international companies that are undertaking these massive layoffs, where with the right legal counsel, you may very well be able to identify elements within the employment arrangement, within the termination even, that allows for an effective challenge to the payments that are being processed. And what tends to happen is that, yes, they put out what the local averages are with respect to possibly termination and severance pay, or maybe pay somewhat under that, based on the fact that in other jurisdictions, meaning other countries, they pay much less on termination. But what you can find is there's potential for significant opportunities where the lawyer knows where to look to find those bases upon which to challenge them now that you're out of a job, and to actually be able to have your lawyer effectively negotiate and really push and drive that company to pay you out more than you would otherwise be looking at, such that when they start off with their lowball offers, you actually get some veritable strength. And here's the other benefit of getting strength and having good tactical positioning. These companies are so large that they can endure paying out more money. The fact is, they have such a wealth of resources, such a wealth of property, such a wealth of money behind them. Their executives are getting paid so highly that there is money there, that you can go after them without being concerned of bankrupting the particular company. Furthermore, you have the ability to put them in a bind, because there are a couple factors here in play. Number one, they operate in multiple jurisdictions in multiple countries. And that means they're coming from overseas. They're coming from other countries. And they do not want the negative perception, negative challenge of being seen as undercutting the local employees, because it gives them a bad reputation both on the business front and on the employee side. And they don't want to have that. And they also don't want to have their other employees in country, in jurisdiction, seeing that they're underpaying and potentially being nailed for this from a legal context. So they're going to try to deal with this accordingly. They might push back. They might well bring in these high-priced lawyers. But the thing is, especially given that you're a long-serving employee, a lot of these tactical mistakes, a lot of these illegal employment-related mistakes on their part are not simply occurring on the termination. They've been happening for 5, 10, 20 plus years. And they cannot be wiped clean. They are out there oftentimes, and it's just a matter of the lawyer being able to identify them and then effectively bring to the point of the large corporate employer to make them a reality and to address them. That is what we are dealing with. That is where your opportunities lie. And that is what you need to be doing when you are part of one of these large international layoffs by these mega international companies that say we're cutting 10% across the board and we simply have to cut across 10%. And that's what we're doing, because they all too often haven't properly planned and structured their arrangements to deal with these situations, because they are so big, they are so centralized, and that centralization all too often has been pushed out of country, out of jurisdiction, and that gives them incredible legal exposure from the perspective of the employee, where they engage the right legal counsel who knows how to find these particular angles. So that's the challenge you're faced with, and that's the opportunity you have, given that you find yourself now in a particularly challenging point, having been released, laid off, fired from this big international company, and you're naturally somewhat fearful of challenging these companies, but their size is their weakness. And that is what we as lawyers look to challenge and to succeed with. Thank you very much.